On today's episode, we have a very honest and open conversation as we head north of the border to talk to my friend, Andy Disher. This is the Youth Worker Daily. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Youth Worker Daily, where we hope to encourage youth workers just like you with tools, tips, resources, and helps so that you thrive in your ministry. And here on episode 5 of our podcast, Conversations with Everyday Youth Workers, I am heading north of the border into Canada to have a conversation with Andy Disher. Andy Disher and I met a number of years ago working together at a conference, kind of kept in touch over the years, and then this past year he and I teamed up again. We both volunteered at the National Youth Workers Convention and kind of reconnected. And as I got thinking about the podcast and youth workers that I just respect and would love to hear their story and have them as guests on the podcast, Andy was one. And so glad and thankful that he said yes. And so we talked and really had a really honest and open conversation. And I hope that's what you hear in today's podcast. I think it's true of many of us. If we were to be completely honest with how things are currently in our ministry due to COVID-19, I think a lot of us might be in the same place that we find Andy today. And so take a few minutes, listen here as Andy shares some of his story and then some of the things that he's been dealing with as he has tried to fulfill his role of youth pastor where he is out in Canada. So let's just jump right into this. Here is my conversation with Andy Disher.
Hey everybody, I'm here with a friend of mine, Andy Disher, and Andy and I we've crossed paths a number of different times in different stages of ministry. And so as I thought about who do I want to get on the podcast and have them share their story, Andy is one that I wanted to do. And so I reached out. So Andy, thanks so much for joining me here on the podcast. Super excited that you were here. And for those who don't know you, I'm gonna have you give just a second introduce yourself. But I'm gonna spill the beans. You are my first international interview. So with that said,
that is amazing. That's incredible.
Andy, tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, and kind of what got you into youth ministry, places that you've served. Maybe some great stories of some things that kind of solidified youth ministry for you. And then tell us where you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, who am I? I'm Canadian. I think that's all you need to know.
Canadian, eh?
And I said earlier on, I gotta say this for the recording, I'm honored to be here. Yes, we spelled that with a U. That's a proper way of spelling it, as is color with a U. I'm from Ontario, Canada. I was born and raised in Windsor, which is right across from Detroit. And so if you ever see me walking around a conference or on video somewhere, I'm always wearing a Detroit hat. They're my hometown heroes. While I'm not technically from Detroit, I can see the skyline. I could have seen the skyline from my back window. And so that's where I'm from. I'm married.
We have the better sports, so it makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not a hockey guy at all, which I get reamed about all the time. I'm married. I have a 9-year-old stepson, and we've been married for, my wife's going to kill me, a couple of years. Not that long. And so not only am I a new husband, but I'm also a new father, and that's been bringing a lot of interesting challenges to my life. Needless to say, my 9-year-old has been a sermon illustration ongoing for the last 2 years, as well as I've been a sermon illustration for myself. I got into youth ministry back in 2007.
That's a big difference, 12 and 7.
Yeah, quarantine equals lack of days and remembering and everything else.
100% true.
2007 is when I got into full-time ministry. Up till then, I was volunteering and helping out everywhere and doing whatever I could, because from 18 to 2007 was 27. for 10 years, I knew that I was called to ministry, and I knew that I was called to
Mhm.
serving and helping and everything else. And so I was just trying to get my feet wet as much as I could. And thank God for the youth pastors that put up with me, and the different people along the way that gave me opportunity to serve. Because I wouldn't be where I am now, nor would I know what to look for as a youth pastor
Mhm.
now. The people that are hungry to serve and that are always hanging around, the kids that are always bothering you, kind of thing. Those are the guys that, or the kids that, or the girls or whoever that we need to pour into, that we need to
Yeah.
have an eye out for, because they're there for a reason. And that's a whole podcast in itself, probably.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Um, and so 2007, I started full time, and I was green and I didn't know anything. And my church said, "Hey, you can go to a conference." And I think I picked out a YS in Atlanta, and the church said, "Nope, can't do that. That's too much." And so I found this small, tiny conference, and I think Columbus was the first one, or no, Cincinnati was the first one. And at that time, it was a group putting on
Hmm.
National Youth Ministry Convention,
Yep.
and fell in love with just all of that, because I'd never been open to that before. And year two comes along, and I think it was Chicago or somewhere, and that's where I got to volunteer. And just the names that we all hear and know brought me under their wings, and helped me just serve, which is what I wanted to do. And in that
Hmm.
serving, I learned a whole lot, which I've brought into the time I'm in now, which is helpful for sure.
Yeah.
So
And it was at a Simply Youth Ministry conference. So the group thing became eventually Simply Youth Ministry, and then it was
mhm.
Simply Youth Ministry with Doug Fields, because you had to put a big name on it to get people to come to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I think my first SYMC was in 2011, and then I think it was 2012 that I was on the volunteer, because I got this email from someone at group saying, "Come on out to Colorado and be a part of our planning team." And
Yeah.
that was a whole exciting new world there for me, and kind of cool to be there with Steph Caro and Rick Lawrence and
Yeah.
Cami and all those guys. Doug showed up, Josh showed up, and it was kind of a surreal moment, because at that point I was, couple years, I was maybe 10 years in, 12 years in, and still felt like a kid,
Yeah.
learning as much as I could learn. Um, so yeah. So let's talk now. Where are you serving? What are your roles? What do you do? Because I think you do a little more than just youth ministry,
Well, thanks.
which is kind of
Thanks to
the
thanks to COVID, my roles are probably like everybody else listening. It's, you name it, and I'm doing it right now. Youth ministry and worship are my roles. The classic youth pastor, small church, job description. But with worship comes obviously the tech side of things, and then kind of communication, social media, graphics landed on that plate as well. So I'm doing those. Now with COVID, I'm doing online services. So every every Sunday morning service that we do, I'm producing and directing and pumping out there. And I gotta mention or throw in the name, if we are mentioning names.
oh, we
Brazelton,
can totally drop names.
if I can drop names, I mean Andy Brazelton, and being able to hang out with him at conference and learning the production side of ministry. It's not a show, but it's an experience that we want people to connect, and all those buzzwords. I'm taking all those things and bringing it into our Sunday morning services, both live and online. So I'm doing that. Um, our first impressions, our guest experience, I'm overseeing that area. So I'm doing a lot, and I'm getting tired. So um, yeah, I'm looking forward to when lockdown is kind of lifted a little bit, and I can actually just get away and go on vacation, because that would be nice.
Yeah.
I'm currently serving in a town called Sauble Beach, Ontario, which is about 4 hours north of Detroit, 2 hours north of Toronto. If anybody knows geography, we're on the beautiful sandy shores of Lake Huron. It's beautiful. We're the second longest freshwater beach in the world, so that's kind of our
Nice.
claim to fame. But yeah, it's I live and work at a beach, and it's as stereotypical as you can think. I love it. So it's going well. The people are great.
Awesome.
Um, what brought me here was I had resigned from my last church, and in that position, I was just worship creative arts, and so I wasn't even doing youth
Right. I
ministry.
remember that.
And I miss it dearly. And I had resigned just because of different reasons. And I'd reached out to a friend of mine saying, "Do you know of any positions anywhere?" And at that moment, he's like, funny you ask, I'm sitting beside a lead pastor who's looking for someone, looking for youth and worship. I said, hook me up. Let's see what happens. And
Yeah.
that was in an October of a year. And by March of the next, I was in and going. So it was a really quick process, which was good. But the really cool thing is that my lead pastor is a former youth pastor of 20 years. He taught youth ministry at a Bible college. So even in the lead pastor role, he gets it, he understands it, he's passionate about it, he cares about it. He's not the nightmare stories you hear of a lead pastor that's like very much against youth ministry. He is incredibly for youth ministry, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, it totally changes your experience as a youth worker. I've been blessed to have 3 pastors who were all former youth workers, and not just, I'm doing my part until I can get to the big pulpit. Like they did it and they loved it, and then they got called up higher in the food chain there. But to know a youth pastor or a pastor gets the youth pastor role totally changes your experience in youth ministry. And we've been blessed to serve in some pretty awesome churches that way. How long have you been at Sable?
Sowell. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. Hey, it's like The Office.
I forgot the Canadian accent.
Sorry, The Office episode just came to mind. I've been here. I just passed the 2-year mark. Okay. And so it's been 2 years of, oh man, it's been a struggle. If I'm going to be really honest, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle of having to overcome the hump of the previous youth ministry leadership and their traditions and their ideas. And there's been a lot of sacred cows and all that kind of stuff that we all deal with. Sometimes people
feel free. I mean, feel free to talk much about it, because I think that's a great topic. I'm 1 year in here. We never really had a full-time youth guy, but there always were interns or someone doing something. But I have definitely followed after some guys who had really big shoes and made those first 2 years hard. So, this is a conversation for youth workers. So share as much as you're willing. Right. I think that's a cool topic if you want to. Yeah. What made it hard? What made it difficult? What were some of the things you had to fix?
Yeah, see, I'm coming from the perspective of who may listen to this down the road, and so I'm trying to be political and trying to be nice. But I
don't mention names.
Well, I won't mention names. The reality is that the youth pastor before me, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and I'd rather not have my weaknesses be pointed out.
No, I'm all,
and so I'm not going to do that. But the youth pastor before me was great in some areas and not so great in other areas, just like myself and everybody else listening. And there was a mutual decision that he wasn't quite fitting in the role he was in anymore, and so he stepped down, but yet he still attended the church. And so and so now I'm walking in a position where there's still students that love him and respect him and want him to be the youth pastor, but he's not the youth pastor anymore. But yet he's sitting in the seats on Sunday morning, and just that dynamic alone brought a lot of interesting conversations. And he and I have talked about it over and over again. And I will happily admit that there were some of my attitude was insecurity, for sure. Because how can I connect with these kids when you're still here, buddy? Like, back off, kind of thing. And there, I think there's been some healing in that relationship. I think there's been some forward movement, but it's been 2 years of struggle. So we're at the mark right now in our youth ministry. We're at the mark where most, or not all, if not all, students that were kind of under him or saw them as their youth pastor are graduating, moving on, and everything else. And so we got a brand new bunch of junior highs coming up, or we were before COVID hit, but we have a brand new batch of junior highs coming up, which don't know any different, which is super helpful because I can pour into them. And the older ones that kind of stuck around and like hung in there, I'm looking to them as student leaders and saying, okay, like, awesome, you're here. Even if you're graduating, let's use a student leadership role in your first year of college or whatever that looks like. And I want you to pour into the ones coming in, because that's what we're supposed to do. So I think we're getting over the hump, but yeah, the first 2 years was a rough go for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and the sad thing is that's not an unusual story. I mean, I know I've been in that situation. There are other youth workers that are in that situation. I kind of like that what you said was, you recognize your own insecurities, because I think that's huge. I just had a conversation earlier with another youth worker, and he said the same thing was true of his own career. The insecurities that he had, and now he's on social media and he's watching what everyone else is doing, and for him, he had to, you know, almost boast about what he was doing so
Mm.
that he felt better when he compared himself to the other youth workers. And he and I talked about how much insecurity really gets us, and kind of hurts our ministry, because we're just so afraid of admitting, one, that we're in the wrong, or we don't have the gifts, or we may not be able to do what someone else can do. And so that kind of hits us, and
Well,
hurts our ministry a little while.
oh, 100%. I mean, and this might sidetrack the whole conversation, but it just, I mean, with this whole quarantine and doing online youth ministry and how does that work? And I mean,
Mhm.
you see the big names, you see the people with a ton of resources, you see the Josh and Doug's at Mariners, and you see all these other youth ministries that are able to do what you would love to do.
Yeah.
And for me, anyways, I tried those things, and there was just no buy-in at all, and
Mm-mm.
that took a hit hard. Like I was like, I'm done. Like youth ministry is
Yeah.
canceled until whenever COVID's canceled, because I
Mhm.
can't do it anymore. And it was a slap in the face, literally, of kind of God just looking, saying, Andy, you're not called to be them. You're
Yeah.
called to serve your students, and your students don't want to do it online. So figure out a different way to serve your students, not online. And I'm still learning that, honestly.
Yeah. Well, part of our conversation is to hear what you're doing during this season. But before we get into that,
See what I did there? Is
um,
a good segue into
I, you got it.
that.
Um, what I have found in my conversations is that, again, you're not alone in that. We in my ministry, we've seen, we went online, and we were live. Everything was live and fresh and spontaneous. Numbers were great, but you have to work so hard to keep things live and spontaneous, and then your numbers start dropping, and then it's like, okay, now we're having other issues, so we have to change things up. um, yeah, and I watch Josh and Doug stuff, and I'm just like, how do we how
You
do we
can't compare.
compete with
You can't.
anything like that?
No.
And not just their stuff. You're watching Sandal stuff, even watching one of the local guys around here who they've been putting together some really creative, fun stuff.
Mhm.
And I think it's so important that we come to that place where we say, where am I? What is my context? How has God gifted me, and what do my students need? And I've leaned on my leaders like big time, saying,
Yeah.
if we're not texting, if we're not sending notes, if we're not making phone calls, if we're not, doing all of the, I dare say, all the old school stuff that
Yeah.
we used to do before social media and all that other stuff, we're going to lose our kids. And really, what I've heard back from parents and from some of my leadership was, man, the note cards, that's a win. The text message, that's a win. And to think about youth ministry, for as much as we've gone forward in advancing technology wise,
Mhm.
at the heart of it, it's all about relationships and how we're
Yeah.
connecting with our students in those relationships. That's the real win in all of this. So that said, how has it looked for you? What are some things that you've succeeded with? Where have you failed? What are you currently doing? Because now we're stepping into summer. My summer calendar is completely obliterated.
Yeah.
We're making it up week to week at this point. But what are some things that you're doing that, yeah, what's Corona ministry look like for you?
Um, yeah, I mean, I said this before, my plate is super full, and
Yeah, you're doing a ton.
there's a lot of responsibility. And the other factor too is not just everything that I'm doing. Our lead pastor has recently been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic. And so,
Oh,
yeah. So, and we're in a building project. And so we're in a lot of just kerfuffle, if I don't even know if that's a word, but we're in a lot of garbage right now, and a lot of stress. And there have been, in the last 12, 11, 13, however many weeks it is, there's been a lot of days where I feel like the water is at my nose and I'm having to tilt my head to breathe, sort of idea. Like it's,
Mm.
it's getting there. So like you said, I've been leaning on my leaders, and I've been looking at them and saying, I need you so bad right now just to focus on your small groups. We haven't split up with genders and grades, 6 to 8 boys, 6 to 8 girls, and then 9, 10 girls and boys, 11, 12 girls and boys. And so leaders, connect with your kids.
Mhm.
Like I can't right now, unfortunately. We tried the YouTube live thing, didn't work. I've tried recorded stuff. That seemed to work a little bit better. I would record a message or sermon, and then uh, hopefully the kids would watch it, and then we join on Zoom and we talk about it and have small groups on Zoom. Didn't really buy in. Part
Mhm.
of the reason is because we are north, and bandwidth isn't that strong, and so if kids are having difficulty, they won't try.
Yeah.
Um, and so what I've kind of landed on right now is youth leaders connect with your kids. Junior highs around here don't have a whole lot of technology, and so we've set up the app called Band, and I've sent it out to the parents and asked them to sign their kids up for the junior highs. Senior highs are not really buying into Band, and so it's all Instagram with them. And I've been finding consistency is a key for us, and so I'm doing these daily 2 to 3 minute devotional videos every day, posted on Instagram TV, and if views are low, then I send the video via direct message to everybody and kind of get them to engage, and then I check in. Hey, did you watch it? How is it helping you? Are you learning anything? Do you have any feedback? Would you want to do a devotional kind of
Mhm.
thing, and have a different face on there? And so that's really it. And I feel because of, well, I feel like I'm failing at it right now, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, and I could give excuses and everything else, but at the end of the day, I feel like I could be doing a lot more student ministry, and I'm at a loss. And so, if anyone's listening and they feel the same way, you are not alone. Trust
Yeah.
me. Every day is a God, I need inspiration. What do I do? And I find different resources through Download Youth Ministry and Grow Curriculum and those communities and stuff like that. um, I was chatting with my wife. I'm like, okay, because she's super supportive, but she's not super involved just because. So I was like, okay, I
Mhm.
need help. What can we do for the graduates? Because we don't have a whole lot of them graduating high school. I think there's like 6 or 7. I said, so what can we do in a safe, social distancing way that we can show appreciation to our graduates? And so we're working on a little something for them right now. But yeah, it's been a tough go. And I don't foresee it ending anytime soon. So
No. Mm-mm.
yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I had a conversation, a Zoom call with my leaders just before we did our last week of online stuff, and I wanted to encourage them some way. I'm like, um, so a little backstory to help explain this a little bit. So I'm 1 year into where I am. June 1st is our anniversary, um, and it's been a program that's been mostly run by college interns.
Mhm.
So there's no real there's no legit longevity of solid ministry. And one of the things that we really wanted to see happen was for leadership to be more than just college students. College students, they're here, they're great. I love them. They're great interns, love our students. But every 4 years, they're rotating out. They're going home on the summers. They go home over the holidays. The church really wanted a more sustainable ministry, and so bringing in adult leaders. So I worked my butt off in the fall and through Christmas, recruiting. Rolled into January, brand new leaders. Everyone's excited. We're doing the training thing. I'm pulling up all the DYM training stuff for volunteer leaders. We're meeting. I'm showing these videos, and jumped into it in January. Starting to see just little steps forward, progression. And then just as the leaders are like, hey, we think we're finally getting it. Because I've been pushing, there's no expectations other than get to know the student. Just meet the student. I want you to know a name, get to know a student. So we're rolling into March and they're like, now I can say this person, I know this person, and they're beginning to pray for them in our leader meetings. I'm like, this is going good. And then COVID hit, bottom falls out. We're separated. And then 2 weeks in, I get one of my female leaders. She texts me and is like, so and so just reached out and text me. Is it okay if I text them back? I'm like,
Yes,
absolutely, go for it. And so with that being said, we just had like the whole carpet pulled out from under us, and in ministry that had been team focused now all fell back on me, and we were just doing everything we possibly could to make it work. But we came to the end, and I just sensed from my leaders like it was going so well, and then we lost all that momentum. We lost all that we had put so much time and energy into, and I just remember trying to encourage them at the end of all this. And I remember saying to them, you know, I've been in youth ministry all these years, and this is by far, I'm at the point where I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
We've worn out our welcome online. We've totally overwhelmed them with social media. And, you know, hey, kudos to you for being able to admit that you feel like you're failing, because I think if we were honest with ourselves, I think most of us are feeling that way. You know, and I love DYM, but I see some of the stuff they're doing, and it just kind of makes me feel like I don't have the means by which to do some of that stuff. And it just makes me feel like we're missing something in all of that. Not really sure where I was going with all of that, but other than, you know, you hit a chord, and I just wonder how many others of us are in that place of we're failing. And we're not, but it certainly feels like we are.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to I mean, I'm going to probably listen to this episode a number of times anyways, but just to hear myself tell myself it's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's it. We have to say that.
And reach out and think outside the box. And for me, I've never had so much dialogue with parents before in my ministry career, you know, and then COVID hits, and that's where I failed, and that's where I've learned. But I've been emailing them and asking them, okay, how do we do this? What do we do? What's going on at home? Yada, yada, yada. And the biggest response back was, in our context up here anyways, was by the time 7:00 hits, whatever day of the week it is, my kids are zoomed out. They're done.
Yeah.
Because that's all school. So the last thing they want to do is jump on for another half hour, 45 minutes and stare at a talking head. And I'm like, okay, well then why am I going to put so much energy and time into doing that? You know, I'd rather spend 45 minutes making a 2-minute video that encourages them and helps them kind of spark a devotional life in their life and stuff like that. So yeah, it's okay right now. I think it's not okay if we lose our heart and if we lose our passion. I think once we lose that, then we're in trouble. But I think if we can keep that up and kind of look at the horizon and say, okay, it's coming at some point. Let's build up a library. Let's use this time to increase our Zoom calls with our leaders and have conversations and involve them in processes and stuff. That's what I'm doing anyways.
Yeah. What does summer look like for you?
No idea. None. Honestly, I mean, 2 weeks ago, we're going to focus heavy on relationship. It's not even going to be, there's not going to be any like structured discipleship teaching time. It's going to be, let's just hang out together. And in those times, we'll have conversations and pray with each other and stuff like that. But, you know, parents are already like, hey, if you need my place, I got a backyard with a bonfire or a pool or a basement, whatever, come on over. And so that's what it looked like 2 weeks ago. Our government just extended the whole thing another 10 days as of today. So it was supposed to be done in 3 days. It's now another 10 days. And I mean, our beach is closed, which is ridiculous. Our Canadian government sucks. I'll go on record by saying that.
And no one else in Canada will hear this. So
yeah, exactly. You know, our provincial, or I mean, if people don't know what that is, our state government has opened up beaches. Our county government has closed beaches. And so it's very confusing. But we can't even go to parks and beaches to hang out. Like once things are lifted to, we're at a minimum to of 5 people in a group. We can't even meet more than 5. So we're still down there. So once things get lifted to groups of 10 to 15, we're going to open up and have nights in backyards and just hang out. and just see each other, and bring a guitar around a bonfire and sing some worship and pray, and that's
Yeah.
it. you know but that's what it looks like right now. But until things get lifted, I'm holding my breath, waiting, honestly.
Hmm. Yeah. You shared that you've talked or spent a lot of time talking with parents,
Mhm.
aside from them saying that at the end of the day, their kids are just, zoomed out. Um, have you been able to gain a sense of how your families, how your students are coping through all of this at home? Where are they kind of in the, gosh, I just want to get out of the house and do something? Or, do you find that most family units are kind of coping with whatever it is that they're dealing with?
Yeah, I think most family units are coping the best way they can, and as expected. Yeah, there's some that come to mind that uh, they're starting to blend families together and hang out together, kind of thing, which I'm still a little wary of. Um, but for the most part, I think they're doing as well as can be expected. You know, um, but I think once the doors are open and people can hang out, they'll be ready to get out of the house and
Yeah,
sayonara, see
yeah,
you for 2 weeks. you know,
yeah.
um,
We've just got to the place where restaurants and stores are opening as of this week. Now we're recording this; it's right after Memorial Day for us here in the States.
yeah,
Um, so things are beginning to open up again, but we still have some restrictions about how many of us can meet together. Like our church won't return. We won't open our doors again until either late June or early July. So we're still looking at least 4 more weeks
mhm,
of online services. Our student ministry and our children's ministry are completely shut down now. The only thing I'm allowed to do, and what we hope to do, is moving forward, is um, we're hoping to host an online Bible study, because we did have some success with that late in the COVID time. Um, but really hoping to be able to meet up with folks,
yeah,
like you're saying, either in backgrounds or backgrounds in backyards, not backgrounds, but in backyards, or
yeah.
because we do have restaurants that are opening, you can sit outside and have lunch. So we're kind of hoping to do some of that stuff. But I bring that up because we put out a survey asking parents, like, what's their comfort level
Mhm,
of their students being able to plug in and start doing things come this June, now that things are opening. And I was pretty surprised. The response was um, almost 50-50. Like half of
mhm,
them were like, we're not ready for, mission trips, summer camp, overnight, no way.
yeah,
And then with that were the ones that were like, we're not ready for our kids to be with other kids yet or other leaders. But then there were the small group of parents that said, yeah, we're okay with maybe small group meetups, maybe at someone's house or even at the church once the church gets open. So
that's a great
it's
idea.
it's interesting to me just to hear how different regions are responding to what they can do, what they can't do. Because our summer, I shared with you before the video, my summer is completely it's blown up. We
Yeah,
can't do mission trip, we can't do summer camp, and being being my first real full summer on staff, my plan was to do mostly relational activities along with the mission trip and whatnot. But now we're to the point that we're just hoping that we can still have some of those relationship um, events and activities that we were hoping to pull off.
yeah,
Um,
we're in the same boat. I'm just hoping I can get a pool party in. you know
yeah,
um,
seriously. Yeah.
at the end of the day. I mean, up here in Ontario, the government has closed all summer camps all summer long, and so we
Mm,
have quite a few Christian camps that are just like, sorry, we're not doing anything. Things are still shut down. We're not doing anything structured in our youth or kids ministry in our church until at least the fall.
yeah.
School's been canceled, I'm sure, down there too, but school's been canceled and there's nothing going on. And so um yeah, it's at this point it's a week by week, and if things lift, then we'll do, like I said, bonfires or pools,
Hmm.
um and go from there. But the gist I get is similar to you, is where our parents are, it, they're split. They're some are, yep, let's get my kid out of the house.
Hmm.
And there's others that are like, no, we're gonna wait until we're more sure. um which I respect.
Yeah.
You have to respect that. You can't beat them up on that at all.
Yeah,
So,
no, for sure. Yeah, so they're going to take this in a complete 180, and I didn't prep you with this in the outlines. What I do for
awesome.
our listeners is I try to put together an outline of questions of things we want to talk about, but just hearing some of the frustrations that you're having and kind of reflecting on some of the frustrations I'm feeling, there has been some positive. And for me, the positive has been more personal. And, you know, I'm going to say this at the risk of people hearing this the wrong way, but I've actually found more time to focus on myself and the things that I need for me, quiet times, study times, reading times, you know, not that we don't do them in our normal season, but normal season comes with a higher paced lifestyle. But being stuck at home, you know, we've had more time with family, but I've had some really quality, quiet times, studying through First and Second Peter on my own, journaling through that, praying through that. I'm wondering, have there been highlights, or has this been a season, or as much as you're dealing with the frustrations, have you had anything like personally that's really kind of helped you think through or get through this season a little bit?
Oh man, no.
Andy,
Not the answer you
yes.
wanted. Not the answer you wanted at all. I'm sorry, that just tanked. No, like I shared earlier on, this has been a season of I need a vacation. Building project that isn't going as well as it should. A lead pastor who is not well, and each day is a question mark. Responsibilities added on top of me. I mean, there's only 3 pastors on staff. I say only, like I'm sure there's some churches that only have 1 pastor on staff, but there's 3 of us on staff. And so with 1 down, the workload is more. And working from home has been a blessing. Yeah, it's been a frustration too, but it's been a blessing. You know, having the privilege of being able to step away from a computer and go downstairs and hang out with my kid for an hour or 2 and then go back to work kind of thing that's definitely nice. You know, and it's again, it's been a frustration, but I can see the silver lining in that too. Yeah, it's been a not a fun season, for sure. Each week I try and go, well, I'm gonna get into a rhythm, and I'm gonna get into a structure, and it blows up on Monday. So yeah, I would say if there's any positive, it's family time. It's, you know, I've changed my sayings from I'm being stuck at home to I have the privilege of spending a large amount of time with my family. You know, and I say that kind of tongue in cheek. I say that both funny and serious, because there were days that I was at church every single day and every night with meetings or work or prep or whatever. And so, yeah, that would have to be my biggest positive.
Yeah. Which in and of itself, I mean, that's a win, because, you know, I think all of us would agree in ministry, it's busy. Life is busy. You're always on call. But for those of us who have been around youth ministry long enough, we also know that with the youth ministry hat comes 5, 6, 7 other different hats that we often have to wear.
Yep.
You shared some of those, so it is a career that keeps us moving. And so maybe to slow down just for a few minutes, to have some family time, maybe that is the blessing within the curse of being stuck at home through all of this. NYWC, they announced last week that it's happening. You were there with us last year. You served as a volunteer in the wonderful bookstore there. But are you looking forward to heading back to the convention this year?
I am. Yeah, I'm hoping I can get I'm allowed to be a volunteer again, and serve and help out, and I don't even go. I mean, my first few years I would go for the teaching and to learn and to soak up what I could, and then it just became a family reunion. And if I can help, my philosophy with NYWC and past conferences have always been, if I can help one newbie get connected some way, or to be refreshed, or to find encouragement, then I've done what I'm called to do, you know. And so that's what I hope I can do again this coming year.
Yeah. And NYWC, this is we're not promoting it,
not at
but
all.
I'm promoting it because
that's who I am. Not being paid to promote it.
That's right. They're not sponsoring this one yet.
But if they ever wanted to, that'd be, hey.
But yeah, we'd love
Listen.
to have MWC sponsor. But yeah, same boat. Conferences are a great time to just be refueled, refilled. As I hear you, I want to refuel you. I want to refill you. I'm like, gosh, NYWC cannot come fast enough. So I think there's going to be a lot of youth workers in our circumstances who are going to come to NYWC this year, more exhausted, more burned out, more frustrated, more feeling like failures than we've ever have seen. And here's what I appreciate. I appreciate so much your honesty and your willingness to be so vulnerable and transparent, because we don't do that well. And it's so easy to kind of hide in the behind the scenes of online ministry and not do anything, feel horrible, but like not talk about it. And so the fact that you brought up that this has been a hard season, I appreciate that. And now it leaves me with the question of, how many of us are really feeling like we're being beaten right now, and or just we're toast, we're done, we don't know what else to do. And so maybe this is a podcast that will reach out to those folks. I don't have a title for it yet, but maybe it is we're failing. Maybe that's going to be the title.
The Canadian failure.
But my hope out of all this might be that maybe we can start the conversation of where do we go from here? We do feel beaten. We feel like we have not had ministry that has been well. I said it to my students. One of our last Zoom Bible studies before we wrapped up our year, I got on and I just had a complete moment of vulnerability. I said, guys, I hate doing this. I hate being on Zoom. I hate doing Bible study. I hate online, but I'm so glad to be with you. Even if it's only on Zoom, I'm just so glad to be with you guys and see you and talk with you. But I think for me, it was just that eye-opening experience of, it was fun week 1, maybe week 2, but week 12, we're done. So I guess what I'm saying here in the long, whatever I'm trying to say, is if you're a youth worker and you're feeling like you're in that same spot where you feel like you're failing as a youth worker, you're not connecting with your students the way you want to or have hoped to, the online thing isn't working, and you just feel like you're losing touch, hey, reach out to us. Love to hear what's going on in your world and why you're feeling that way. And maybe we'll have to come back in a week or so, and or a week or so after this airs, and kind of revisit the conversation of what do we do in the midst of failure? Because the only thing I could hold on to, and kind of what I said to my leaders was, yes, we don't know we're failing, we're not doing this well, but here's what I do know: God is still God. God has promised to be true in His Scripture. He has purposes, and He has goals, and He has ambitions, and He has what He wants to do, what He wants to accomplish. And those things are going to be accomplished. And COVID, our failures, our weaknesses, our strengths, none of that is really going to deter God from doing what He has set out to do. And so even in the lives of our students, when we feel like we're losing them, God has a purpose and a plan for them. And as long as God's keeping his hand on them, then I'm going to rest in that knowledge that even in my failures, just as in seeing your weakness, I'm made strong. God's still going to carry through on his plan with or without us, despite how we feel. And so if you're in those boats, if you're anywhere in that situation, or if you're in that boat of failure, hey, God is still God, and He's still going to accomplish His purpose and plan. Do you agree to that?
Yeah, I mean,
better.
I was gonna say, and it feels like Jesus is napping in the boat right now, but yeah, I mean, God is still he's definitely there for sure.
Wake up, Jesus! We're drowning here.
It's just napping. We're fine. We're fine. Everything's good. Everything's good. Cool. Yeah, I mean, the thought that came to mind too was to add to the encouragement, youth workers, reach out to your leaders, and don't surround yourself with yes men or yes people that will just like say whatever you want them to say, but reach out to your leaders and seek the encouragement that you need. Don't be ashamed of that. I on a regular basis message my people, and I'm just like, I need something. So if it's not good, just say, hey, Andy, constructive criticism, and I'll prepare myself to take it. But otherwise, I need something. So, and that cues, I've told them a number of times, and then that cues them to be like, oh, Andy needs a little, pick me up or a lift up or whatever. So yeah, I don't think it's wrong to seek out the encouragement that we need, because I mean, we all know that we get way too much discouragement and criticism that we never asked for,
Yeah.
So why not ask for the encouragement that we need to keep going?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I've definitely been in that boat. I remember after one of our live online things, I was not feeling very happy about how it went. We had some glitches, it just didn't feel like it was going off well. And I came into my wife, and the first thing she said was, you're losing students. And I just thought, oh, like, that's not what I needed to hear. Not what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
Thanks, wife. I know you love me.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So maybe we just do that. Maybe we encourage youth work. Reach out. If you're in the spot where you're feeling like you're failing, reach out. Connect with your network. If you have a local network, reach out to some of the guys or women or folks in your network, and be honest, be vulnerable. I think we need to get past the place where youth workers are afraid of being seen by other youth workers of being less than or competing with. Like, let's get out of that. We're all in the same place. We want students to know Jesus. Outside of that, how we do it doesn't matter. What you do at your church is great. What I do at my church is great. But we have to get to that place where we're not afraid to be real, and we're beyond the place of competing. And let's just be youth workers and be honest with each other.
And if you don't have a network, I'm starting a new international chapter of networks. So no, but honestly, like if you're listening and you don't have a network, reach out, and I'd be happy to just network and be there for sure.
Yeah, and we're starting one here in the northern section of West Virginia. Hopefully within the next year we'll be putting one together. So if you're in the Ohio Valley area, hit me up. We're gonna start one here. Andy, thanks for your time. Thanks for being vulnerable and honest, and maybe taking this podcast to a place where it needed to go. And I appreciate that, and I'm grateful for that. If folks do want to reach out to you, what's the best way a youth worker can knock on your door, so to speak?
Instagram. Andrew, I don't even know my own stuff. This is terrible. Andrew Disher, Disher on Instagram is probably the best way to do it. Let's do Instagram.
Just Instagram?
Yeah.
All right. And what we'll do is we'll put the link, or we'll put some more information about your Instagram into the companion blog that goes along with this episode of the podcast. And so make sure you hit the link in the description, go over to the companion blog, and learn a little bit more about Andy and connect with him over social media. Again, Andy, thanks for your time. Let me pray for you and for youth workers who might be in your same situation. And we'll wrap things up here on the other side. Let me pray for you, sir. God, we give thanks for the incredible privilege that we have to do this thing called student ministry. For all of the seasons of joy and of seeing kids begin relationships with you and chase after you with their lives. God, there are other seasons where we feel less than. We feel like we have not lived up to the hopes and expectations of those around us. We deal and wrestle with criticism. And maybe even now, as we move through this Corona season, maybe we are feeling completely fried and a failure, not being able to do what we are passionate about doing. God, if that is us, if that is a youth worker who is listening, I pray that you would speak truth into their lives, and that they would have the courage to reach out. I pray for my friend Andy, God, and the things that he is facing and dealing with at his church and with his ministry. And pray that you would walk him and his leadership team and the pastors of the church walk with them through this season. And Lord, what we know to be true is that you are a God that will complete and accomplish your purpose. And Lord, that truth might be the truth that has to sustain us as we move forward. So pray for Andy and the many things that he is responsible for. Lord, give him creativity and the passion once again to fulfill those things. Lord, and maybe a season to have a vacation, just take a break and be renewed and refueled by your spirit. In the meantime, God, you are a good and great God, and we cling to you because of that knowledge. For it's in your Son's name, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, my friend, it was good to speak with you. And hey, we may have to come back here in a couple of weeks and just have this conversation again and see where we are on the other side of all of this. Sound good?
Sounds good. I'd be up for that.
All right. We'll have 2 international episodes of the podcast.
That's awesome.
All right, Andy. So good to talk with you. We'll be chatting with you pretty soon here. Thanks for being here.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Well, welcome back. I really hope that today's conversation with Andy was one that maybe has encouraged you in some way. You know, when Andy chose to be so open and vulnerable, kind of took me back a little bit. But I'm so glad that he was, because I think Andy really shared not only how he was feeling as a youth worker during all of this, but I think he's speaking for a lot of us who are really kind of struggling with what it looks like for us to do online ministry. You know, I shared some of my frustrations, Andy shared his. I guess what I'd like to encourage you with is, if you are feeling those feelings of failure and of frustration, maybe you are kind of dealing with some seasons of being overworked, doing different things. I mean, a lot of us youth pastors, we wear different hats at different times. And maybe this season right now is one where you're wearing a lot of hats and you are getting close to that place of exhaustion. Here's what Andy and I say. Don't wait for yourself to hit the wall for you to say, I need to talk to somebody. If you are feeling those feelings of failure, of frustration, of exhaustion, reach out today. Reach out now and let us know. Talk to somebody. Pray with somebody. Don't feel like, that what you're feeling is isolating, or that you're by yourself. I mean, there are other youth workers out there who would love to come alongside of you and encourage you and pray for you. You can get all of Andy's contact information and my contact information. Go to the link in the description to the companion blog. Everything will be there for you. Reach out to us. We'd love to talk with you, pray with you, and encourage you as you navigate through this season. We're all working hard, we're all struggling, we're all trying to figure it out. And even though it's been three plus months, I mean, this is still a challenging time for us. And if we're not reaching out to each other and encouraging each other, nobody else is going to. So do us a favor, do that, reach out, let's talk. All right, thanks so much for watching and listening to today's episode. Really grateful that you're here. We are excited to announce that not only are we on Podbean, but we are now officially on iTunes. So if you prefer to listen to us on iTunes, you can go ahead, search The Youth Worker Daily, and right there you'll find conversations with everyday youth worker. As always, you can visit us on the website, theyouthworkerdaily.com. There you'll find links to other podcast episodes, along with the other videos that we've created as a ways of encouraging and providing resources and tools for youth workers. So go and check them out. You'll also find a link to our YouTube channel, which has a gallery of all of those videos and vlogs. We'd love for you to subscribe and follow along, leave comments, and share this content with your youth worker companions. As always, be sure you're listening and watching and following along on social media. You can find us at Youth Worker Daily. That is at YTH Worker Daily. We are actively posting more of our content, but we are looking for your content and your great shareable posts, and we'd like to share them with our audience of youth workers here at the Youth Worker Daily. Finally, If you would like to be a guest here on the podcast, there is no real requirement other than that you are a youth worker. Well, I'd love to get together with you and have a Zoom call and talk about what's going on with you in your ministry. This podcast is all about the stories of everyday youth workers, the things that God is doing in and through you and your students in the ministry that you are a part of. I want to share your story with other youth workers and encourage them through your story. So if you want to be a guest on the Conversations with Everyday Youth Workers podcast, simply just reach out to me. You can send me a direct message on our social media, or you can just send an email to theyouthworkerdaily.com. I'm sorry, theyouthworkerdaily@gmail.com. Gotta get a little tongue-tied there when I go between the website and the email, but theyouthworkerdaily@gmail.com, and I will follow up with you, send you a link to set up a time for an interview, and we'll talk about what it is that we want to share on the podcast. So if you're interested, love to sit and talk with you and have you as a guest on the podcast. That's it for us today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Hey, do us a favor real fast. Give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Subscribe either on iTunes or podcast. Let us know that you're following and listening. Greatly appreciate that. And you have a great week. And we'll see you right here next time on the Youth Worker Daily.